Come on. Oh, sorry, Pete.
The last couple days have been really tough. After I premiered last Saturday's video, I went to check on Skeletor, and unfortunately I found that he was developing laminitis.
Huckberry, come on.
Supporting limb laminitis is pretty common when a horse has an injury and they're not fully weight-bearing. 2006 Kentucky Derby winner Barbaro actually had to be euthanized from this condition.
Hey, Whip.
By Monday, Skeletor had deteriorated so much that the only ethical decision was to set him free from his pain. I really thought I was going to have a little bit more time with him, but I knew that he was suffering, so my decision was a pretty easy one at the time.
Nigel.
When I went to take Skeletor to his appointment on Monday, I did notice that Whiplash was not feeling quite right. Whiplash was a stallion for 17 years before I bought him, so he is a really stoic horse even when he's sick. Out of an abundance of caution, I decided to take Whiplash with me to the vet so he could get looked over. What I thought were very mild colic symptoms ended up being an impaction as well as a displacement in Whiplash's colon. If I hadn't already been going to the vet, I probably would have medicated him and waited a day, and by that time it may have been too late to help Whiplash. Thankfully, I was able to leave him at the vet's office. He was put on IV fluids. They sedated him, and we have been withholding food.
Zig.
Yesterday, I was able to bring Whiplash home from the vet's office. He was really stressed there, and I do a pretty good job of watching him at home. I've been keeping a very close eye on the kind of poop he's producing and how often it's coming out. His colon was able to go back to the normal position by the time I picked him up from the vet, but he still does have a little bit of impacted poop still in him. Since I picked him up, he hasn't shown any signs that he's uncomfortable, so today I will be starting his whole refeeding process. Ziggy has been doing a really good job keeping in company. I don't think they actually like each other, but they're not pestering each other at all. It had been raining all day yesterday, so Whiplash was inside. With the type of colic Whiplash had, it is imperative that you withhold food so you're not adding to the compaction. As I go to refeed him today, I'm doing a super saturated pellet, and I'm just putting a little bit of hay in here to soak. He made 2 poop piles last night, so I'm only going to give him 2 very small meals this morning.
It's your little dish.
Since Ziggy has been inside, I've been able to feed him lots of extra food. He's been getting free choice alfalfa. The situation with Whiplash has been a much needed distraction. I've been able to get through the day, get all of the horses fed, and have things to kind of keep me going. Having so many animals to take care of doesn't really give you a lot of time to take breaks, even when something really awful happens. Right now, all of my attention is focused on Whiplash and making sure I'm refeeding him the best I can. Whiplash did have an incident at the vet. He had a really hard time in the stocks and did cut up the back of his hocks a little bit. Whiplash loves to walk around in his stall, so they've been able to stay pretty normal sized, and the cuts should heal up really easily. Since I'm basically just watching Whiplash all day long, waiting to see when he poops again, I'm going to do a bunch of chores around the barn. I've been really wanting to replace the metal feed bins that I have out in all of the pastures, so this morning I'm putting some out for these boys. Stewie, Little Gus, and Pete seem to be doing fine without Whiplash. They've been enjoying their round bale.
Boy, Pete.
The last horse that I had colic
It's okay,
this
Pete.
bad was actually Pete, and it happened to be the last time I put round bales out, which was a few years ago. I think the increased amount of fiber and just the sheer volume of food that Whiplash was eating did lend itself to the impaction that he got. We've also been experiencing some cooler temperatures overnight, and typically that can create some gas, so it was just probably the perfect storm that led to his condition. In this other dry lot that I took Ziggy out of, we have Gus,
Come on, Gus.
Goose, and Studman.
Come on, Gussie. Come here, buddy.
Since we did get a ton of rain, I've been keeping the horses off the pasture. I want to make sure they're not tearing it up, and the sugar content in the grass is definitely a little bit higher because it is actively growing with all of the rain. With these boys being locked in their dry lot, they were being a little bit too aggressive around Ziggy, and I just felt like they were picking on him too much. I was supposed to have a vet appointment for Ziggy later on this week, but since I had to pick up Whiplash yesterday, I did go ahead and just bring some blood in for Ziggy.
Whip.
He has kind of plateaued in his muscle building journey since I got him, and I do think that he probably does have PPID or a metabolic disorder that is preventing him from looking as good as he could. I should have the test results back in a couple of days, and we can get a plan together for him. For now, he seems really content being in his stall with the run. I have been turning him out in the big arena. I've also been putting him out on Frisco Bill and Prim's tiny pasture. Since it is going to be really nice out today, I will be putting Whiplash out in the small arena for the day. He has been pacing in his run, and it will be good for him to get out and move in a bigger area. Whiplash is still producing manure, but it is very compact, and his impaction was quite large, so the vet is really having me limit the amount of food that he's getting.
Good boy.
This morning, in addition to his tiny meal of slop and soaked hay, he's getting a few bites of this wet grass.
Hey, Mare.
Whiplash needs to be eased back into getting a more normal amount of food over the next couple of days. It can be really tricky to tell when the whole impaction has passed. Whiplash hasn't shown any signs of discomfort since I brought him home from the vet, so that is awesome.
You okay, buddy?
I will just be waiting for him to poop again, and then as soon as he produces another pile of manure, I will give him another small meal of super saturated food. This is Huckleberry's favorite time of year. He gets to spend a lot of time at the barn with me. As I'm going around doing random chores this morning, I am keeping a very close eye on Whiplash. I was a little bit nervous when I saw him lay down this morning, but I think he's just getting a good scratch in because I have been brushing him quite a bit. As soon as he's done rolling, he gets right back up, so that is pretty normal for a horse. I am going to have a tiny bit of a snack before I get in on some more serious chores. I've got a few more stalls to clean with so many horses in the barn, and I want to make sure I get Ziggy turned out so he can stretch his legs today. Thankfully, even with Whiplash having some trouble, he is drinking a normal amount of water. Ziggy seemed a tiny bit upset that he was another stall over, but the last couple of days he has really been enjoying his extra food. Summer is definitely gone in Montana, and we are now in fall weather. I've had to switch over to some more serious clothing when it is cool in the morning. Whiplash only made 2 poop piles overnight, and I want to make sure I wasn't missing any inside of his stall, so I'm going to go through all of these shavings just to double check. To give you guys kind of an idea of what a normal stall looks like, this is Ziggy's after one day. He's kind of a slob. In addition to very small meals, only when he poops, Whiplash is supposed to be getting regular exercise, but he has basically been exercising himself this whole time. My vet also wanted me to try and get a urine sample from Ziggy, and every time he goes to pee, as soon as I open his stall door, he gets a little bit shy and stops. The whole refeeding process after an impaction can be very tedious. Whiplash is basically getting around a half a pound of actual forage for every pile he's making. A normal horse is going to need about 20 pounds of forage a day. So he really isn't eating very much food right now. It can be tricky to stay with the plan because I know it's the best thing for him with him trying to resolve the rest of his impaction. It has been really hard to convince him, however, that this is the right course of action for him because he just wants more food. One of the reasons that I am pretty adamant about taking any horse that's colicking into the vet is because they have the tools to determine what type of colic the horse is going through. If I just gave Whiplash some pain medication and crossed my fingers, he definitely would have had a rupture of his bowel and he would have died for sure. One of my biggest pet peeves since being on YouTube is seeing other creators kind of shoulder off the responsibility of treating a horse for colic. It really isn't appropriate to just treat them with anti-inflammatories and cross your fingers, especially if you're investing in a rescue type horse that you know you're going to need the input of a knowledgeable veterinarian. It is really exciting to see so many people trying to help at-risk horses, but it's pretty disappointing that when these horses are brought home, they aren't getting adequate veterinary care or proper nutrition. I'm sure my opinion is going to be a little bit different than some people's, but I think that if you are trying to get these horses in a better place, you owe it to them to give them the best possible care, which includes giving proper emergency care even when it is inconvenient or pretty expensive. I have not had to leave a horse at the vet's office on IV fluids for a very long time, but I'm guessing it's probably going to be a little bit over $1,000 for the 36 hours that Whiplash was at the vet's office. That is a pretty normal price for the services he got and definitely worth it to get him on the other side of a very serious problem. Due to my background, I feel really comfortable monitoring him from home and giving him tiny meals throughout the day. For horses that do have the same thing going on, it is not unrealistic for them to stay at the vet's office on fluids for multiple days in a row until everything is resolved. I gave Whiplash a little bit of time to simmer on his first meal of the day, and now I'm going to give him his second little meal. It is 10:30 and I'm just mixing up a little bit of his mash with some hay and a little bit of salt. All of my horses have access to salt 24/7, but in Whiplash's case, it is really important that he's actually getting it. There are a lot of different things I'm balancing. I want to make sure he's not getting too much food, but he needs to get enough food to keep everything moving. He also needs to get exercise, but he can't exercise so much that he's dehydrating himself. I also have to make sure that he continues to drink water even though he's not eating, which can be tricky. In addition to watching Whiplash, I'm also keeping a very close eye on Nigel these days. A few weeks ago, Equine One sent me a bunch of stuff to test out. One of you guys reached out to them and said some nice things about me, so they sent me a bunch of their new products. This video isn't sponsored, but they did send me this stuff for free to test out, which is really cool. Typically in the winter, I do use kind of like a dry shampoo powder on some of the horses, and they started creating their own that I'm testing on Nigel today. He is typically a filthy little beast and does get disgusting very quickly, so it'll be interesting to see if it actually works. For you guys that have not seen the last video I did on Nigel, he does have PPID. His numbers aren't crazy, but we are going to start treating him. He has been getting a compounded version of the medication Pergolide. I did have a pretty long chat with my vet about if this was actually even worth doing. Pergolide is not very stable and it does not handle compounding very well, so I do have some of the traditional PPID medication on the way for Nigel. This medication comes in blister packs that are actually filled with nitrogen, so the pill is not exposed to air and doesn't have a chance to denature. I am all about saving money with my horses where I can, but in this instance, it looks like the compounded version of this medication is just not worth it. I have seen a difference in Nigel's demeanor and his energy. He is operating at a pretty high level of sass these days. Even so, I do want to get him on the proper medication so he doesn't get worse. I should be receiving that in a few days, and I will slowly switch him over to the more appropriate medication. I was pretty worried with this guy. I could definitely see that he was getting a little bit more depressed, but now I feel pretty hopeful that this condition is going to be able to be managed fairly easily now that he has started his medication. After a little bit of a break, I'm ready to go catch up Ziggy.
Zig! Zig!
I feel like Ziggy is pretty much completely over hanging out with the other boys. He doesn't really do too much when he's turned out in the big arena. Whiplash did produce another fine pile of turds, so he does get another meal. Since Whiplash was a stud for so long, he pretty much poops in the same exact spot when he goes into a little pen like this. It makes it so much easier to keep track of what he's producing every day. He seems in pretty good spirits today. I am going to hope that he just keeps cruising along. I am going to head home for lunch and then come back in a few hours and check to see if he made any fresh poop.
See? More poops! Come on. Boy?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions about a horse that is colicking is that once they poop, they are completely out of the woods. This is really not necessarily true. Whiplash had a huge compaction that was definitely more than one pile of poop. While he did pass some really hard, solid poop at the vet's office, the poop that he's producing now is still pretty hard and dry. There is a good chance that if I fed him normally, he could get backed up and recompact. Compared to what Whiplash is getting, Ziggy is getting a ton of hay.
Zig.
Ziggy was really interested in getting all of the little salt particles off my hands. I'm trying not to worry about Whiplash too much. I do think he is on the other side of his impaction at this point. I am just gonna keep chugging along. Every time he poops, he'll get another meal. I noticed that he is still urinating normally, so he is staying pretty hydrated still. With him by himself, I can tell exactly how much water he's been drinking. I was given very specific instructions from my vet not to up his food until the poop that he's producing is pretty normal and not as dry. My vet is awesome, and even though she is out of town, she has been texting me to check on Whiplash and kind of see how he's progressing. One of the really nice things about not having a real job that I have to go to every day is that I can come out and check on Whiplash every couple of hours just to see how he's doing.
Hey, buddy. More poops?
It would obviously be so much easier if I actually lived at the barn. I just live right down the road, so it's not a big deal for me to scoot over here. Tiny does seem a little bit upset that I've been swooping in during prime mousing hours. Since Huckleberry has been at the barn a lot more, I haven't noticed very many gophers around. They're pretty smart about the little jingling of his collar. With it getting cooler out, though, there are a bit more little mice in the barn that Tiny needs to take care of every day.
Oh, Huckleberry. Whip.
I was feeling really hopeful that I would see some normal poop today, but this is extremely hard and compact. Hopefully this is the last of the really hard stuff that Whiplash has inside of him, and I'll start seeing some normal poop soon.
Hey! Ziggy! Hey, buddy.
This morning, I am going to turn Ziggy out in the small pasture behind the barn. For some reason, Prim and Frisco have been turning their nose up at this grass, so I want to get it kind of chewed down before the winter time, otherwise it'll just go to waste. Prim has been trying to make friends with Ziggy, but he is not interested in her. I think she might be too aggressive. It was really exciting to see that Whiplash made a pile of poop about an hour after I fed everyone breakfast this morning. I feel like he's starting to kind of lose his spirit a little bit, so this morning I'm gonna water down this grass and let him graze for maybe a minute or two just to get something different. Naturally, Huckleberry was pretty interested in making sure that I kept all of the water where it was supposed to be. Whiplash still looks pretty normal. He hasn't lost very much weight, even though he's not getting nearly the amount of calories that he normally does.
What are you doing, Doug?
A few years ago, when Pete was really having a severe bout of colic, he lost maybe 150 pounds just because he needed to have his food withheld for so long. If Whiplash continues to poop normally, I'll be able to bump his food up a little bit more the next couple of days. Since he only had a few little bites of grass this morning, and he has been making some pretty decent poop piles. I will give him another mash meal this morning.
Boy.
Although he was pretty upset the first couple of days he had to be inside by himself, he is starting to calm down quite a bit every day. Before I bought him, he had never been in a stall. He's just been living out on a pasture his entire life. So that's a big adjustment for a horse that has been outside with other horses for so long. He still has been pacing back and forth, but it is good to keep everything moving. One thing that has really been lifting my spirits is to see Ziggy getting along so well just by himself in his new kind of routine. I think he can definitely tell that I still am a little bit down in the dumps. I talked to a few of my friends that have Arabians, and they are going to keep their eyeballs peeled in case one comes along that needs a home. I'm really not in a hurry to get another horse right now.
See, buddy.
This time of year is tricky. I haven't gotten my hay yet, so I'm not quite sure how expensive it will be. With us hoping to move in the near future, it does present another set of challenges for bringing home new horses. I have a pretty solid network here in Montana, so it's easier for me to rehome horses here. There is a pretty good chance that when we move, it will be out of Montana and it will be quite far away. Moving all of these horses is going to be a huge task, so that's something that I'm keeping in mind as I prepare to get a new horse. I also want to make sure that Ziggy is not going to require lifelong medication. If he does, I'm going to have a really hard time justifying sending him to a new home when I know it's really difficult to continue to treat these horses. If he tests positive for PPID, the chance of me keeping him are pretty high. Huckleberry caught the sniff of some deer in the corn, and he was having a little bit of trouble coming back to me. Before he got too far away, I decided to go and snatch him up so we can go home and get some lunch. The last thing I need today is Huckleberry running off on a little side quest for badgers. This is a pretty big badger hole.
Come on.
Huckleberry can definitely tell when I'm distracted, and he uses it as an excuse to do a little bit of reconnaissance work around the barn. There are quite a few coyotes out this time of year, and with all of the tall corn, I can't really keep my eye on him like I usually do, so I've got to keep him close to me even though he would rather be out adventuring. Since Whiplash is still seemingly having some really hard turds, I am going to try and give him a little bit more water with his mash.
Buddy, look, we got your poop.
I know it seems ridiculous, but this kind of loose turd pile got me really excited for Whiplash. It means that his impaction is working through and he's having more normal turd piles come out.
Ziggy! Hey, buddy. What? Boy.
Because Ziggy is having more normal turds, I'm going to start feeding him a little bit more. In his mash, I'm going to give him some beet pulp that's super saturated, as well as some hay that's been soaking for the whole day. This should keep everything moving along. It's nice and sloppy, and thankfully he doesn't have any problems scarfing it down. I don't think Whiplash is quite out of the woods just yet, but it is really starting to look up for him. He had another really normal poop right after I fed him. Since Ziggy is probably going to be spending some more time inside and I haven't gotten my load of alfalfa yet, I picked up some compressed bales and came back to check on Whiplash. I am pretty much staying in a routine of coming out and checking on him every 2 hours during the day.
Something. Let's get your food.
I'm trying not to be too obsessive about it, but I really want him to get better and be able to eat a normal amount of food. I did text my vet and we are going to start him back on half rations tomorrow. I still have to separate it out in little meals throughout the day, but it's a higher volume and hopefully this means that in a couple of days he'll be back to normal. I was a little bit disappointed to see on Friday morning he had only made one poop pile overnight.
What kind of poop you got? Looks like just one poop, buddy. It's not enough poop.
Hopefully with the increased amount of food I'm going to be giving him, he will make a lot more poop piles and I won't have any more trouble with him over the next couple of days. Thank you guys so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.